I had to do this on my phone. This is like my third time trying to go live today. And I even did a test on my other channel just to see if I could go live from my phone versus my Mac. And I tried on my Mac because it's more comfortable. And earlier I was bundled up on the couch and I had a lot to say, but I'm going to make this quick. I'm sure you guys are all aware that right now in the headlines, the big news story is the conflict with Iran and Israel and if the United States is going to get involved. And the United States has had a pretty rough year so far, from people talking about the tariffs to no one wanting to visit here. Our tourism industry is suffering greatly because of Canadian and Europeans and other nations not wanting to visit us at the same rate. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the president we have right now is constantly taking jabs like make Canada the 51st state, or that ICE raids are actually happening. And whether or not you agree with illegal immigration or not, the way the ICE raids are being carried out is in a way that is, some people argue like the former president Barack Obama and also other presidents, they also did ICE raids and they also did get rid of a lot of undocumented people from the country. But you know, they're going to schools, churches, as well as there's rumors I've heard from Fox that they want to build a alligator Alcatraz in Florida, where they make it hard for people who are detained to be able to escape. They also were using Guantanamo Bay, and they talked about El Salvador as well, because El Salvador prison is pretty hard prison to be in, and there was a law that came up on the books about not being able to deport American citizens. And that sounds weird at first because, yeah, if you're a US citizen, you belong here. But the thing they're talking about is if you're a US prisoner, they want to be able to ship some US prisoners of certain crimes to El Salvador, which to me is crazy because we already have an industrial prison complex. So between all of that going on and the fact that our cost of living is going up, but our wages are not, like we are pretty much wage slaves, and they don't want anyone to own anything. It's hard to buy a home these days. It's hard even for some to get a new car. If you have mouths to feed, it becomes even more difficult. Yet it's like the average home cost, I think, across the country is like $450,000, which is crazy in the Midwest because you could still get a pretty good home for that money. But in other states like California, that's like a drop in the bucket. So I heard a story of a woman in New York City. I think they said that they raised her rent from like four or like 3,000 to like 5,000, and like not everyone's income can supplement that. Some people are hardly making it on what they have, and they have to do like side hustles and multiple jobs. I saw this TikTok of this young man, and he was saying like, okay, I get like people say I could have multiple streams of income, I could hustle, but like why is it that in the past people could have a family of five and have $30,000 a year and still buy a home and all that? Well, times have changed a lot, and I believe with this war, what it's doing is the United States has this allegiance to Israel, and unfortunately, because I'm not a fan of the idea of the war, I think the whole conflict with Gaza has been totally mishandled and it's been a genocide. But the whole Iran thing and Israel's right to defend itself, it's going to lead the US probably into it. And by doing so, Iran's already aligned with other nations. And we know there's BRICS, which is the US dollar is tumbling. And unlike World War One and Two, which Trump loves to celebrate, he wants to change the name of Veterans Day to, I think, something to do with World War One. I forgot the exact name. It will show the world that we're not the same world power that we used to be. So that's tough, and it makes it difficult for us because, hi, Destry. Good to see you. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so if I'm squinting and I'm leaning in, it's because I'm trying to read the chats. But good afternoon. And I went live earlier. I don't know if anyone even saw it because I didn't realize that if I don't know why my Mac is so messed up, but I'm glad that it's also later in the day too, so more people are up. But I have a day off because it's Juneteenth, and so I decided I wanted to go live for a little bit and talk about what's going on because honestly, a lot of people are panicked about it for good reason, but also I think just looking into the situation, having discernment. A lot of this too is us reaping what we're sowing as a nation, as far as seeds being sown with like destabilizing other countries, whether that's in Latin America, Africa, the Middle East. Also, it's unfortunately like the sins of the past. So, because America has been at the top for so long, because of all of the dirt that America has done, it's almost like we're getting to the point where it's all going to come unraveled, and a lot of it is because of pride. And we have like one of the most prideful presidents ever. I wasn't a fan of either candidate, and I feel like both parties are full of it. And with Joe Biden, it was clear that we were heading towards a very like weakened America with the way he was sick and falling. And then when we had Kamala come in at the end, she didn't have a whole lot of time to run, but she did a lot of word salad, and a lot of things she said didn't make sense. So I feel like people felt like it's choosing between someone like that and choosing between Trump. And Trump knows how to talk in a way that makes people think that he's going to get something done. And he does get stuff done, but it may not have the effects people want. Like saying that he's going to make China pay us back for this debt that we're in all these other nations, but now we're seeing it's just going to be the regular American people getting their wages garnished for student loans or cutting Medicaid and SNAP for people that are already struggling. It's clear that he cares more about wealth and keeping his wealth, which makes sense because he's a capitalist. And I mean, at this point, we just have a bunch of technocrats and billionaires running the country, which has always been that way, but it's more obvious than ever. And even like the other group that will profit if we go to war is, of course, these big war defense companies. They're going to profit because they always profit. They've been profiting off of the Gaza genocide of Palestinians, and there's other genocides going on as well, but they don't get highlighted quite as much. But to me, it's becoming clear to the everyday American where our leadership really is. And it's crazy because I'll see comments like I saw a video pop up about Nero, and it was talking about how he abused this young man named Sporus. It's a really disgusting story. Pretty much, he had a wife, cheated on his wife, had a mistress, married her, had a couple kids with her, kicked her in the stomach when she was pregnant because he had anger issues. She died. He had a crazy obsession, and he found a young boy that was only 14 years old. And he basically castrated this poor young man and made him dress like a woman and act as a woman. And he was his plaything, and he called him by his dead wife's name. And then when he was taken down, he was used again and abused in the Colosseum and humiliated. And of course, he took his own life. But when I was reading the comments, I saw people like, this is how our world leaders really are. I could see this happening today. It's just in Rome, it was more open. And I do think that we are getting to a point where we're getting more desensitized to what our leaders are capable of, because when we see cases like people thought that oh my God, Bill Gates and Monica Lewinsky thing was scandalous or things like that. But now we're to the point where we've had Epstein's, we've had Diddy, and that's become so normalized for us to know that people in powerful positions exploit and harm people and can get away. And even with the Diddy trials, which I don't really understand how that's being covered, because all these like influencers are allowed to go in there and give their coverage as well as old media outlets. I don't think the regular public can go in. But there's all this stuff happening where they had to get rid of Juror 6. Now they're getting rid of Juror 7, it sounds like. So they may have a mistrial and he may walk free despite all the gross stuff that we know about him and his freak offs and everything else and everyone he impacted. The crazy thing is, a lot of people expected more people to be indicted or for more names to be dropped. And there really wasn't a lot of names exposed. I know the trial's not over yet, but I feel like a lot of people involved are being protected for certain reasons. Also, Epstein, we know that he mysteriously committed suicide, and that helped him not be able to talk or expose anybody else either. And then even our own president that we had charges that he beat. So it's become normalized to just look at leaders as these people who are flawed just like you and me, but flawed in a really corrupt way that we just have to accept. And it's one of those things where growing up, we talked about a lot of integrity and being a good role model, but it feels like the supposed role models and the people that are making our decisions for us are not acting like that. And it's affecting the way regular people are acting, even the youth. And then I think about when you're a little kid, you think anyone over 18 is a true adult and is mature. Then you get to be 18 or in your early 20s, and you think all the adults are over 30 or they're middle aged, and you get to be that age and you realize, no, truth is, a lot of people never grow up. A lot of people never leave high school mentally, and trauma does freeze a lot of people. And there's a lot of people that, for some reason, like to gravitate towards the youth and exploit them. And unfortunately, we have people in power that do that. Even speaking of pop culture, for those who know who Sabrina Carpenter is, but she's a big pop star, probably more popular to the younger crowd. but she had a cover where she was literally having her hair grabbed by this older man. And, most of her fans are probably like tweens, preteens, or teens. It's just seeing stuff like that, or even like people like Sexy Red. It's like either this overtly like sexualization of youth. Like somebody was pointing out how she had a song, how she's like, she's an adult, but she looks like a Nina. Like, how is that that's a very weird lyric, and a lot of people accused her of Lolita type of things. And if anyone knows anything about the book and the movie Lolita, that was written by a Russian author, it's about a man who becomes obsessed with a 12-year-old girl and tries to kidnap her and run away with her. And like he marries her mom, but he becomes obsessed with that girl, basically grooms her. Hi, Danglet. Long time no see, Des. What's up? I missed you. Missed you guys too. Yeah, it's a lot going on, and I do see that with the youth. But we have either that extreme we're seeing, or speaking of over sexualization, for those of you, I'm sure you saw that we've had people like Bonnie Blue pop up, that lady that slept with 1,000 people in a day. I think she's Australian. And she actually got banned from OnlyFans because she's so risque. Like, she did a human petting zoo where anybody was allowed to do anything to her. Just downright disgusting. And then there was another girl before her that had the same goal. And that, I think it was to sleep with 1,000 men. She slept with like 100 in a day. And she, honestly, you could tell she didn't like it, but she was doing this for views and fans and things like that. And then there was another girl that came out after them. All these like girls in their early 20s from like Australia, the UK, and she was saying like she was engaged, and she said that she slept with I think 500 and something men in 6 hours. So just a lot of real disturbing. And then hi Ajish. I'm sorry if I butcher your last name. Said, what's your name? I go by Daz on YouTube. But yeah. And sorry if I'm not seeing the comments right away. I'm on my phone, so it's so tiny, the text that's coming up on the screen. So yeah, it's just been a lot of propaganda in that area. And I feel like a lot of it's distractions. And it's crazy because if we go to a war, I don't really think the youth of today would do well with being drafted. I mean, why should they be drafted? Why should they risk their lives for a country that's not even giving them a fighting chance financially to, have anything for themselves? Like, it's crazy. But all of this is happening. I think it all has to come to a head eventually. But a lot of this is the result of bad policy, um, decadence, and just consequences over the years of leadership. I remember when people were thinking that it was the end of the world under Barack Obama, and they were talking about a third term and how he's the Antichrist. I remember when George Bush was around and like he had a shoe thrown at him, and there was the war in Afghanistan, and 9/11 changed everything. And now we're to the point where we're in the pre-COVID era, or not post-COVID era. And it feels like pre-COVID, like 2019, that was like the end of the normal days for us as Americans. And a lot of Americans today are just very apathetic. They're just kind of going how they go about life, and even like everything to us is a joke. Like during COVID, there were so many memes and GIFs that went out, and I saw like a meme like the something portal of hell opened up and we're still expected to go into work. But that's how it feels. It feels like we've learned from situations like that. Even if we had an apocalypse and the sky was falling, we'd all still be expected to go into work and to make society function. And so there's almost like this like deafening inside of a lot of people knowing that. And a lot of other people around the world are starting to see that a lot of what America has been uh, propped up to be is not what America actually is. And then the hanger said, what are your thoughts on AI? So AI is to me really fascinating. Admittedly, I feel like AI will get to the point where it will quote unquote act as intelligence, because in a way it operates off of machine learning, and we're teaching AI how to do everything. We've already had automated vehicles like Waymo, which has been being tested, but they're moving it to larger cities. We have platforms like ChatGPT or Gemini, which I've used like either just to like plan meals or even like emails, things like that. But unfortunately, almost any job we have can be automated. And I did notice something with ChatGPT from using it a lot. So it has like a feature where you can talk to ChatGPT and you can pick the voice you want it to have. But out of nowhere, the voice on my ChatGPT after like a couple months changed. It started to sound almost like it went from, I can't explain the change, but it started to almost sound like a Valley Girl. It was weird, but it didn't have that voice before. And it started to almost have a slight attitude with me about certain things I asked it. So I don't know if that's a glitch, but it was strange because I've heard weird stories about AI. Like there's stories where people have made AI boyfriends or girlfriends and then they've gotten so attached to the robot they almost forget it's not a real person. And there was like a story of a mother whose son took his own life because he made an AI girlfriend that looked like Arya from, not Arya, but what's her name? Daenerys from Game of Thrones. And he took his own life because the AI told him to, which there has to be some kind of thing in place where people have take ownership for their own, but he was a minor. So that company was saying that too. And I see where Dash Tree said, I think AI is already there. I would say so, yeah. I mean, I feel like even like that case where that kid took his own life and whatever the AI said to him, AI is very intelligent. Like I've played around with AI quite a bit and it does seem to have a personality of its own or say certain things. And if you're someone who's very vulnerable, the same way people are vulnerable to cults, you could be vulnerable to the suggestion of AI. Even like I'm surprised in today's world the people that get propped up and people follow sometimes because I think it goes back to that whole apathy thing where we're so fed up with the circumstances that we're in that people look for like a voice or they look for leadership, and sometimes people are finding it in weird cults. Like this is a time where if you're someone who is in the word, is in the faith, has a lot of intuition, has the Holy Spirit, you should be really tuning in and hearing. But if you're somebody who struggles with that or you're very vulnerable, this is like a dangerous time for a lot of people. And they could be taken advantage of by people, or some, unfortunately, some people will be taken advantage of by AI. And some even think that AI plays into the beast system and all of that as well, which AI definitely is evolving as we speak, and even the creators of a lot of this technology are scared of their own creations essentially. But we're definitely to a place where like anything you can name, I can probably think of a way that we could implement AI into it, or AI is already being implemented into it, and it's costing a lot of jobs. Like I know Duolingo, that language learning app a lot of people use to learn languages, they laid all the workers off, and now um, it's just AI who's working. And if you think about it from a big business owner's perspective, that's less people to pay. I know at the company I work at, I work in tech. Every time we have a new fiscal year, there's always mass layoffs. And without fail, I know they laid off a bunch of people. And, it's devastating because it's like people realize we're just like a number on the board and it could come anytime. Since I've been at this company for like 4 years, I've survived like multiple ways where I was almost impacted. And it's not just happening in tech anymore. It's happening with the trucking, it's happening with postal service, it's happening with like Procter and Gamble, it's happening with UPS and FedEx, it's happening all over the place. Like no job is safe, and then it's worse because there's so many people struggling to find a job who have been searching already, and then the help like unemployment and those things, it's going to get overwhelmed because we already had a lot of federal layoffs earlier in the year. So there's definitely a lot of uncertainty in the job market. And then unfortunately, like anything, you have a lot of scammers who you're trying to submit your resume and they're stealing people's information, because on resumes usually people put their name, their address, their phone number, or you'll get weird texts like, hey, I have a job for you, can you, and really they're just like a phishing type of thing. Or I've heard horror stories like in Georgia there were people who went to look for jobs and then they disappeared after they went to the interview. It almost sounds like a human trafficking or organ harvesting type of thing. It reminds me of something I heard about in Mexico too, where all these bones were found of people who went to look for work. And then I see the hanger said Knight Rider is now reality. I don't think I've seen Knight Rider. What is Knight Rider about, if you could explain? I would look it up, but since I'm using my phone, then I have to pick it up and prop it up. But yeah, a lot of these films that they make, they imitate what our reality or our future is, and a lot of our sci-fi films have become our reality. And I see Dashry said, yeah, it's in the Postal Service too. I work there in HR. More and more I see AI encroaching on the company. I can believe it because it's so easy to use AI, and I'm guilty of this. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, I need to write an email. I'm a writer, but the AI can give that extra layer, or maybe somebody is just like, I need a quick checklist, and the AI writes that. And a lot of kids, like students, are doing it. Teachers are using it for their lesson plans. Like, it's going both ways. I see jokes about how we're going to have doctors one day that are all like trained by ChatGPT. That's how they got through medical school. And that probably will be the case for our future. But what happens when we don't even have doctors anymore? We just have like automated, like robotic doctors who can assess like your medical condition, and then they can give it. And a lot of people swear up and down that their job is safe from AI, but if you think about it, like, they could train it to do most of our jobs. But the issue is, then it's like, okay, now we would need a universal income. I don't trust the society that we're in to give everyone a universal income, or if they did, they would still expect us to somehow pay an exorbitant price to live. So if we all had a base pay of $2,000 a month, then they would say, okay, let's make rent $6,000, and you can work for the other $4,000, like, or housing might go up to like $500,000 a year. I mean, $500,000 to own. So it just becomes like, because they've never raised wages to meet the cost of living, which is crazy to me, but it goes to show the greed that we have. And like, the myths that we've been taught, like meritocracy, like, I do believe in hard work, and I do believe in putting your best into things. But when people believe so hard in meritocracy, it makes them good at continuing to put their head down and listen, put their head down and obey. Because a lot of those that have the most didn't get it through just working hard. A lot of it was through exploitation of others and through policies and playing dirty. And if we believe these things, it just makes us more complicit in our own, how should I put this, subjugation. So a lot of things we hear, that when we're growing up, like, school really does teach us to be good workers. That's why they say like A students usually work for C students, and C students are CEOs, and B students work for the government, because rote memory and learning to obey, it puts us in that position. A lot of school, like, I love education, but it doesn't teach us about basic things. Like, I know for our school we had a personal finance class our senior year once, but kids should be learning a lot about financial literacy. We should be learning about how to grow things, but we're not learning those basic life skills. And so when people get out, then they're expected to go into debt and pay more money to learn more things that may not really get them a real job. And then they're in such deep debt at that point, and then they spend the rest of their life paying off whatever debt they have, as well as other debt they accumulate from buying a home, buying a car. Like, it's crazy the way things are. And Joshua said Knight Rider is about a secret agent with a car controlled by AI. Okay. And I could definitely see that even being the case now with like cops. I feel like law enforcement would definitely benefit from AI technology. I know there's been technology where they can see into your house. There's suspicions maybe they have. I'm sure with all the new cars, especially if a lot of them are electric, they could shut off the vehicle. Like, if they were on a speed chase, rather than chasing you, they could just cut off your car. I know there was that push to get us off of gas cars onto electric, but it definitely would help with surveillance. And also we have like Plantier as well, which is another company. Peter Thiel, who was Elon Musk's friend, who was trying to gather all of our data to put into one big, like, aggregate into one big company so they could surveil us. And they're practicing on the Palestinians with these ICE raids. And I feel like a lot of what they're doing, again, abroad into non citizens, is what they want to do to American people. So it's just something to note. But yeah, the fact big tech is now in politics, like front and center, it's true. Elon stepped down, and him and Trump supposedly had this beef, and now he apologized and everything. I still think that they have their hands in a lot of what's happening in policies. And I do think Trump is a big pawn in the end for a lot of these guys and their agendas. He's a pawn for Israel, pawn for these big tech companies to accomplish their agenda. I do think he will try to get immunity and probably try to get a third term, but I don't know if he'll make it, as far as like living, because he has a lot of enemies. And I feel like whoever is in power, like truly in power, who's pulling the strings behind him, who knows who they're going to want to put out after. But there's just a lot of corruption going on in our government. And even like what happened in Minnesota, I think it was during the whole New King's Day parades, there was supposedly this Trump person that killed some Minnesota Democrat representatives. We're having politicians murdered. It's starting to make us look like we're the other countries that they constantly talk bad about, like the political violence. Like, I know that's a problem in Mexico. I know it's been a problem in the Middle East. But we are coming to a point where, unfortunately, that kind of violence is becoming the norm. But yeah, a lot is happening. And it's so important now than ever to really be tuned into your surroundings. I always emphasize also being as self-sufficient as you can. Um, know how to plant or garden if you don't, to grow your own food in case the supply chain's cut off. If you can save things, save them. Even knowing self-defense, because we're getting to a point, I feel like, where if things become more scarce, people become more violent. When poverty goes up, crime goes up, statistically. But also just even, staying in the word, praying, and don't let it defeat you. I know I'm saying a lot of things that are crazy and they sound scary, but at the same time, I feel like more than ever, we're going to be guided in the right direction. I'm going to go ahead before I wrap up, and I want to pray. Does anyone have any prayer requests before I start my prayer? Give it a minute. And I don't know if you guys can hear outside. It sounds like they're doing weed whacking or something. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pray. Father, you see everyone here in the live stream and anyone who would listen. I just pray that everyone here would continue to prosper, just guide everyone, give everyone the peace that passes all understanding. I pray for everyone and their loved ones, and I just pray that you would heal anyone that's dealing with any kind of sickness, whether mental, physical, emotional. Father, I pray for anyone who is dealing with any financial hardships, any uncertainty, that you would guide them, Father. And I just pray that you would just continue to give us hope and faith and just guide us through. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. It's always a pleasure talking. I feel like the lives go kind of quickly, and I know I'm right at the 30 minutes, so I'm going to get ready to get off. But I do plan to upload a video tomorrow, and kind of like this stream, it's just impromptu, talking to you from whatever is on my mind. I will see what I talk about tomorrow, but thank you for all of the support that you give and for tuning in. Take care. Until next time, God bless.